Welcome, Artimus Pyle.
First, what's your name?
I'm Jay.
Okay, let's start again.
No problem. Welcome to the show. It's Artimus Pyle.
Hey, Jay, thank you for having me.
It's so good to see you. My memories of you playing go way back. First time I saw you guys, you opened for Jake Isles' band, Cincinnati Gardens. I didn't even know who you were, but there was a giant Confederate flag across the stage. And of course, pronounced LYNYRD SKYNYRD. It just came out or just coming out. And it was an amazing show. Walking into something I didn't even know what I was getting into. From there, I followed you guys. I was living in Ohio, but I saw you up there with Elvin Bishop. Then I went down to Miami Marine Stadium, saw you play with Charlie Daniels' band right on the water.
That was a wild show because the promoters oversold that show, and the police brought the dogs in, and a lot of people were hurt. But I remember that show as a floating dock in front of Marine Stadium.
People were jumping in the water and
people were in the water, and there was wires, trunk cables going into the water. I was afraid somebody was going to get electrocuted. And we came to the stage from across the bay in 3 flying bridge fishing boats. And it was so cool coming across the bay, and I was up on the flying bridge, my hair blowing in the wind, we're on our way to Marine Stadium. And we did a lot of shows with Charlie, and it was always great playing with Charlie.
Yeah, amazing memories. And then, of course, I saw you guys, the original band, Street Survivors, just coming out. You played up in Seattle at the arena there, and it was just so great to follow the evolution of the band. So many great memories. But who were your heroes? Growing up, who were the bands or artists or drummers that might have inspired you to want to do this?
Well, that's pretty easy. The first guy, of course, would be like Gene Krupa. And I'm 65, and my father listened to Jimmy Dorsey, Tommy Dorsey, Les and Larry Elkhart, Harry James, all the big bands. And then, of course, Count Basie and all the great bands that were out there. And so I love all kinds of music, from jazz to classical. I'm known as a Southern rock drummer. I'm in the Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as a Southern rock drummer. But that night we were inducted with Miles Davis.
Wow.
And Herbie Hancock was able to induct Miles Davis. So I was getting to meet some of my heroes. And but Ed O'Shaughnessy that played on the Tonight Show, one of the great drummers. Billy Cobham is of course Ginger Baker, of course Keith Moon, of course John Bonham. But a lot of the Elvin Jones, a lot of the old jazz cats that played. I steal a drum lick from every drummer that I see.
Yeah.
I told Carmine Appice a while ago, I said, Carmine, I stole some of your hi-hat technique, and he was like, cool, man. And then, of course, he probably listened to Bernard Purdy.
Sure.
Purdy, and his and I could name every drummer, and that would be an influence.
Yeah.
But the top guys, I guess my favorite drummer would be Billy Cobham. He was with John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Spectrum album.
Spectrum. And he did Intermounting Flame and Birds of Fire. Those were inspirational albums to me. Changed my life.
Fantastic.
And then, of course, I listened to Jeff Beck, Wired and Blow by Blow.
Yeah.
That was stuff Gary Rossington and I used to just sit for hours and have recreational moments. And it was the 70s.
Sure.
And we would listen to Blow by Blow and Wired just at full volume, back before we realized that sound would hurt your ears.
Yeah. And all the way through, music is little tidbits now, but you'd be able to enjoy that full album and the artistry. Well, tell us how you joined LYNYRD SKYNYRD, how you came about, because I know they've been around for a little bit, playing around Jacksonville. What was the story of how you got that call or got the job?
Well, I was living in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and the Marshall Tucker guys, George McCorkle, Paul Riddle, Tommy Caldwell, the bass player, and so we had, some jam sessions, and of course they were just starting to make it, opening up for the Allman Brothers, and their album had come out, and Paul Riddle was very young, I think he was like 16, and so they knew about me and knew that I played drums and knew that I could play, and Charlie Daniels was looking for a drummer. He had 2 drummers, and one of his drummers was going to leave. So I drove to New Orleans, Nolens, and I went down there and talked to Charlie, and he was going to hire me. Then his drummer that was going to quit decided not to quit. And Charlie came to me. This is how great Charlie was. Charlie came to me rather than to make up some big story or just blow me off altogether. Charlie said, Artimus, my other drummer that was going to quit decided not to, and if we stop to work you in, it's going to really hurt my tour, and I need to keep going. And I said, Charlie, I totally understand. Thank you for being honest. And it was during the 1973 fuel crunch where people were sitting in lines and pushing their cars up to the gas pump. And I didn't have any money. And Charlie, without me knowing about it, put a $50 bill in my pocket. Could have only been him. And so he said, hey, I'm going up to Atlanta to play a show with Dickie Betts. And why don't you stop through on the way home from New Orleans to Atlanta, on the way home to Spartanburg, South Carolina. So stop in and play. So I did. I went up there, set my drums up, jammed. Dickie Betts came out, was jamming with Charlie and everything. But I didn't get the gig. But he said, but I do know of a band that needs a drummer. And I said, yeah, what's the name of the band? He goes, they're called LYNYRD SKYNYRD. And I said, that's kind of a funny name. And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, Charlie, do they work hard? Little did I know how hard that we would work all over the world, in the studio, never any time off for the solid time until we had the plane crash. And I thought I made Charlie pretty proud of me by going in and filling the bill. And then I worked on Nothing Fancy. We recorded Saturday Night Special for the Burt Reynolds movie, Longest Yard. And then I went to England to play with another band, and they called me up in London and said, Artimus, we're going to have to cut our tour short with our other drummer. We've had some medical problems. We're going back to the United States. We're going to finish the Nothing Fancy album, because we only had the one track, Saturday Night Special. So we went back, and I recorded the rest of the album with Al Cooper. And and I was in. Ronnie Van Zant believed in me. I was an unknown, but he had talked to Charlie Daniels and the guys from Marshall Tucker, and they said, yeah, Artimus is a player, and he seems to be an okay guy, So we highly recommend him. And Ronnie hired me, basically sight unseen, kind of.
Take us behind the scenes of writing the Street Survivors album. So many great songs. What was the chemistry like?
That was the turning point for us. Nothing Fancy with Ed King and everything. Then Ed left the band. Then we did Give Me Back My Bullets. And we had only the two guitar players. We didn't have the third guitar player. And it was raw. And it was a struggle. And I didn't like the album for years. A lot of our Nothing Fancy, Give Me Back My Bullets, a lot of those albums, not Street Survivors so much, but also, I didn't like the way they were recorded. My drums were too thin. But years later, when all of my cuts with the band, all of my albums with LYNYRD SKYNYRD were digitally remastered, everything suddenly was the way it was supposed to be. And I remember crying going down the road the first time that I heard a digitally remastered cut off of one of ours previously undigitally remastered. They played it on the radio, and my drums sounded like thunder. And I just cried. I said, God, that's the way they were supposed to sound. And then all of those, those thoughts of not liking the way things sounded, it went out, because now it sounded the way it was supposed to. So I was happy about the digital stuff and everything. But, a lot back in those days, they'd say, well, we'll fix that in the mix. And then the album comes out, and it wasn't fixed, and it's too late. They printed 1 million copies, and it's too late to do anything about it. So that was the same way with Billy Powell. He'd do an album cover, and he'd have a silly look on his face, or some ridiculous. He'd be doing on Nothing Fancy. He was shooting the bird,
flipping them off,
and he was really upset because his grandmother was going to see that, and they said, "Oh, we'll fix that." Well, it's done. It's printed.
Yeah.
So, it all came out in the wash. Now I look back on everything we did, all the pictures we took, all the films we make, all of the recordings that we did, and it's all sentimental. It's all good. I look back, with good feelings.
Sure. Sure. I mean, it's gotta make you feel so warm that the music is held up so well. I mean, we saw you last night perform one of the tribute band. There's people out playing these songs. You hear them in the football stadiums. The music is alive. Sweet Home Alabama, Call Me to Breeze.
It's in movies. It's on television.
All of that. I mean, what does that feel to be kind of an ambassador of that era and style?
I feel embraced. And you're right. It's all around me. It's on the TV. It's on movies. It's on people's lips. It's in their hearts. I get kids coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq that tell me that they take a Lynyrd Skynyrd song into battle. I mean, those kids go through a lot.
Yeah, you hear it on a ringtone. You hear it on anywhere.
Those kids go through a lot,
Yeah.
and for them to tell me they take one of our songs into battle as a battle cry, means a lot. I know that Ronnie would be so proud.
Yeah.
2 songs and Forrest Gump, and then of course the opposite side of that. Forrest Gump was a great movie, acclaimed, and then of course there's Joe Dirt, which was I thought it was funny. I thought Kid Rock did a great job in that, and David Spade. I thought it was very funny, but he wore Skynyrd T-shirts all through it, and they played Skynyrd music, the little pieces, and so I've lost my friends. Gary is still with us, but Ronnie's gone. Alan Collins, Leon Wilkeson, Billy Powell, Steve Gaines, Cassie Gaines, JoJo Billingsley. Leslie Hawkins is one of the original Honkettes, hand-picked by Ronnie Van Zant. She's with us. She's down in Jacksonville. But they're all gone. But I feel embraced by the music because it's all around me. And I meet fans that tell me stories where they were when we crashed and how sorry they were, and I know they mean it. And when the fans come up, I know they mean what they're saying, that these songs mean a lot to them. So I hear their stories and I share with them, and it feeds my soul. It keeps me alive.
It's amazing that music has that healing quality, that inspirational quality. To see these songs, you to be that living ambassador, like I say, you and Gary, carrying on, as a living ambassador of this music. We really appreciate all the memories you've given us. What advice would you give to that young drummer, that young band coming up today? It's a different world, but they still have a chance to create their own style or voice. What advice would you give them? What do they need to concentrate on to stay focused for that shot?
Well, any young drummer, any young musician, I have 5 children. They all started off playing drums, which you have to learn time, right? But my youngest son plays trombone, but being a drummer helped him, right? Learning time. So, no matter what instruments you play, have a set of drums around. It's fun. It's fun banging on drums. So, and it teaches you the foundation of playing, which is time. But you must love what you do. You must love playing drums because it's a lot of work, and it's a very physical thing. I play a 2-hour show of Lynyrd Skynyrd music, and then we end with Freebird, which is like, running a 26-mile marathon, and then running an extra 20 miles. So, you got to love what you do, especially if you're a drummer, and you have to play every day. Don't play for money. Play for yourself. Play for yourself first, then play to your band, and then play to your audience. If you're satisfying yourself, you will be fulfilling to your band, and then that will come out to the audience, and they'll feel that you're having a good time doing what you're doing, that you're not there to do it for money, that you really enjoy entertaining and playing the music and trying to make it as good as it can be, and not making mistakes and practicing. And then you get it back from the audience. You get the feedback from them. And I used to love the audience, and I still do, when we do a song and, Freebird or Sweet Home Alabama or any of the songs. All of our songs are recognizable songs. There's no filler tunes. There's no 2 Lynyrd Skynyrd songs that sound the same.
Yeah.
They all have different little nuances, and that's interesting as a drummer. And I love Bob Burns, the original drummer. He and I were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame together. Bob was going to come out here with us, but he had medical issues. So I said, Bob, take care of yourself first, and there'll be more gigs. But the fans love seeing Robert and I together, Robert Burns, because we are the drummers of the real Lynyrd Skynyrd. We are the engines of that band. Nobody knows the music better than Bob and I, from the inside out. So, my advice was just, you definitely have to love what you do. And I'm a true drummer. I rode horses as a kid, and those rhythms underneath me. But I was in Boston when those bombs blew up. I was only blocks away visiting a young friend of mine that was going to college. And he said, Artimus, let's go down to the end of the race. And let's watch the end of the race. There'll be bands, and we can drink some beers and have a good time. There'll be girls. And I said, look, man, I got a 21-hour drive to Florida because I'm jamming with the Allman Brothers down there at the Wani Festival, and it was Galactic. I jammed with Galactic. I jammed with the Save the Wetlands band. I jammed with the Allman Brothers. I jammed with Widespread Panic, Michael Franti, all these great bands, and I went down and played with them.